The floor dropped away, and Rudeus fell through it, which was exactly as undignified as it sounds. He landed in a small room, about 6 tatami mats, faint magic circle on the floor radiating soft light. He tried earth magic immediately. Nothing. He channeled more mana. Still nothing. He could feel the mana leaving his body, but it dissipated before it could form into anything. The magic circle was absorbing or nullifying it. He reached out and touched the edge of the circle. The wall was there before his fingers expected it. No give, no vibration, smoother than glass and marginally warmer than the surrounding air, which was wrong in a way his instincts registered before his brain did. His fingertips tingled. Not painfully, the low, continuous prickle of something that was actively doing something to the air around it. A field rather than a surface, pushing back at his mana the way two magnets of the same polarity pushed each other. There was a smell too, faint, high, chemical. Ozone, the way it smelled after a lightning strike or a very large spell discharge. The kind of smell that meant a serious amount of magic had been poured into this thing and was still sitting in it, patient, waiting. He punched it anyway. It didn't even vibrate. Ha ha ha! It's futile. Futile, I say. That's a king-tier barrier that I had created so I could trap Roxy. The rotund boy from upstairs came waddling down the steps with a magnificent grin, waddling being the accurate verb, the weight distributed in that specific way that meant each step involved a small but sincere commitment to momentum before the next one could begin. Pax, Chiron. 7th Prince. The person who had imprisoned Roxy conceived a villainous scheme and was currently descending stairs like a very self-satisfied penguin who had read one too many monologues. Rudeus noted, clinically, that this was the person Roxy had described in her letters as being similar to him. Roxy had said this. About Rudeus, he was choosing not to engage with that comparison emotionally. "And you are?" Rudeus asked, maintaining a poker face. Pax gloated. He drew himself up to his full height, which was not very much, and told him his name. Then delivered the information Rudeus most did not want to hear. Roxy's not here. God wasn't here. There was no God. Rudeus actually went through the bit about Euler and Catherine the Great before collecting himself. He wasn't proud of this. He took a breath. He considered the pragmatics of the situation. He asked sensible questions. He apologized for the stone cannons yesterday and offered a proper legal process involving a lawyer and a formal trial. Pax ignored all of this to reveal his plan. Use Rudeus as bait to lure Roxy back to the country, whereupon he would make her his sex slave, have her bear 5 of his heirs, and perform the first assault in front of Rudeus before cutting off his head so Roxy could see true despair. A pause. Boy, this kid had some wild delusions. Rudeus asked his actual practical question. How would Roxy know he'd been taken captive? They couldn't find her for 2 years. Was Pax going to somehow spread this information himself? Pax froze. Well, she's incredibly capable. I'm sure she'll catch wind of it somewhere. So the plan was, trust that Roxy will find out somehow. Right. Excellent planning. The conversation devolved from there. Pax slapped Lilia, who had gotten her gag removed and was trying to negotiate. Shut up, I don't need anything from an old hag like you. Then Pax went upstairs and slid a lid over the hole above, leaving Rudeus with the faint glow of the magic circle. Alone in the dark, Rudeus assembled the picture. Pax had captured Lilia, probably suspicious she was a foreign spy, then found out she was connected to Roxy, then devised this scheme. He'd been preventing her from sending letters, which explained the 2-year detention. Aisha had escaped to send the letter herself. The soldiers had falsified their descriptions of Rudeus, a huge, brawny man who laughs loudly as he jumps from roof to roof like a pervert. Apparently, to help Aisha, Ginger's family had been taken hostage. He was stuck. He spent a day attacking the barrier by every method he could think of, pounding on the invisible wall, trying to scrub the magic circle off the floor, attempting to leap nearly 4 meters to the ceiling without a staff, unleashing as much mana as he could in the hope of overwhelming the barrier, which had no effect whatsoever. His mana disappeared like a lighter in wind. The spark was there, the gas was there, and there was absolutely no fire. If he'd at least kept his staff, he might have been able to do something useful. Sadly, Ginger had taken it at the door. He considered pretending to be sick so they'd lower the barrier for a healer. he considered pledging loyalty to Pax. He briefly drafted a speech. "Truth is that Roxy's been getting on my nerves for a long time now, boss. Heh. And actually, I know where her parents are." He discarded it. He could abandon every last bit of his own pride for the sake of escaping, but saying anything bad about Roxy was physically impossible. She was God. He felt like Princess Peach waiting for Mario. Some hours later, footsteps. They stopped above him, then came down the steps. The man who appeared was not Pax. He was about 20, thin, oval-faced, wearing expensive black and gold clothing, with glasses sitting above prominent cheekbones. He looked like the serious bookworm anime character with opaque glasses archetype. He held Rudeus's bag. "I am the Chiron Kingdom's third prince, Zanoba Chiron, Pax's older brother." He'd brought Rudeus's bag. He extracted the Rudeus figurine carefully from within and placed it just outside the barrier, then demanded, with gleaming eyes and a tone that was extremely not casual, where Rudeus had gotten it. Rudeus said he'd picked it up while traveling on the demon continent, bought it from some merchant. He improvised. The merchant said showing it to a superd and chanting, "Rijud loves children," would make them treat you like an old friend. Zanoba's eyes gleamed dangerously. Not that. Where was it made? Who made it? Was the creator someone deeply involved with the superd tribe? Then Zanoba reached back into the bag and produced a Roxy figurine. He set it on the floor, plunked himself down behind it, and began to deliver an exegesis. The gist: he collected figurines from all over the world. This particular one was in a category of its own, the material harder and heavier than anything the dwarves used, the craftsmanship on the staff alone representing a technical achievement that professional sculptors couldn't replicate. It had been discovered in the market 5 years ago, purchased by his brother Pax when he saw it resembled Roxy. Zanoba had spent years trying to identify the creator. He'd traded away Ginger, the 12th strongest knight in the country, in exchange for this figurine. This was apparently a thing you could do. As for Roxy, she had left the country. His brother had gotten friendly with her by stealing her underwear and peering at her while she was bathing. Rudeus's internal response to this information was, in order, shock, moral outrage, a mental image of Pax receiving a traffic cone-shaped earth lance to the rear end, and then, very quietly, the uncomfortable thought that he had left his own teacher's panties in his mother's care for years. He would not be examining this thought further. More importantly, on the issue of these figurines, Zanoba began. He then produced, from the bag, a small box. From within it, a wooden pendant, handmade, not by practiced hands, and underneath the pendant, wrapped in the pendant's cloth, a pair of white panties, homeplate-shaped. Rudeus knew exactly whose they were. Lilia said she tried to send these to you for your 10th birthday. The object of Rudeus's personal faith. Roxy's panties. Unfortunately, they had been washed. The divine presence had departed. God was no longer in that underwear. In her place resided only Lilia's sincere and slightly unhinged devotion. Zanoba hummed, leaned forward, and began his analysis. What followed was 15 minutes of the most comprehensive figurine criticism Rudeus had ever heard in either of his lives. The way the fabric wrinkled, the hint of leg, the barely suggested outline of her figure beneath the loose robe, achievable only because the leg was positioned forward. From the back, the slight outline of a small butt, not sexy to see in real life, but captured in such a way that the imagination did the rest. And then, the 3 arms, one for the clothed pose, one for when you removed the robe, the mechanism for undressing the figurine. The way her expression didn't change, but somehow communicated completely different things depending on whether she was dressed. That's not the only thing. Now, let's look at where her hand is positioned when you've removed the robe. She's covering her breasts, but not quite hiding something. Can you see it? Can you tell she's not quite covering it? Zanoba stopped. He looked more closely at the figurine. "Ah," he said. "Exactly," Rudeus said. The mole. The mole under her arm, which Zanoba had shaved off because he thought it lowered the aesthetic value of the piece. The same mole that Rudeus had emphasized had made the focal point of the most intimate detail of the figure, the one that communicated Roxy's embarrassment at not being able to hide both at once. Because that was the real intent. Not the breasts, which she was technically covering. The mole, which she was not. Zanoba convulsed. Foam appeared at the corner of his mouth. I didn't understand at all, and I've defiled this creation. It's just a mole. You can add it back on. Anyway, about the panties? The panties are the same as the ones on the figurine. Rudeus confirmed this visually. Of course they were. He had used the pair he was most familiar with as a reference. Roxy had 4 other pairs at the time, each slightly different in design. She was fashion conscious, even in underwear. There was no more hiding it. All right, so what do you want to know about the figurine? Zanoba hit the floor. His entire body slapped against the ground in prostration. So you, my lord, are the one who created this figurine. He tried to kiss Rudeus's shoes. The barrier bounced him back. Gah! Why is this barrier here? Who dared to put this here? Master, please allow me to pay my respects to your godlike hands. Thus, Rudeus gained a slightly alarming disciple. He told him to find the magical crystal, maintaining the barrier, and destroy it. Zanoba announced he would go break through the ceiling with his fist first. Rudeus talked him down. Zanoba looked the room over for an hour, found only a letter-sized hole in the ceiling with a removable lid, Pax's food delivery slot, then cheerfully said, "Just leave everything to me," and strode off up the stairs. Rudeus watched him go with a keen sense of foreboding. He should have just asked him to bring food. At this point in the story, Rudeus didn't yet know the following things. That Zanoba was a blessed child, born with superhuman strength, that he had ripped off his infant brother's head at age 3 while saying, "You're just like a doll," then beheaded his wife the day after their wedding night for apparently similar reasons. That he was, functionally, the most destructive military force the Sharon kingdom possessed. That the first and second princes were not reluctantly protecting Pax, but simply terrified of Zanoba exploding in their vicinity, and that Ginger had calculated, with remarkable precision, that giving Zanoba the Ruijud figurine would cause him to identify Rudeus as an ally whose rescue he would pursue with his characteristic thoroughness. Several hours after Zanoba left, he returned. He was covered in blood, not his own. He was smiling. He was holding Pax by the head. "Ow! Ow! 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 Stop it! Please, elder brother! Stop! Shut it, Pax! Ah! Gah!" The 2 elder princes who filed in behind him went pale. Ginger entered with her sword drawn. Zanoba, still smiling, outlined the charges. Pax had taken soldiers' families hostage, including Ginger's, had prevented Lilia from sending letters for 2 years, had used a king-tier magician's pupil as a trap, had sabotaged the kingdom's relationship with a court magician who had been teaching their soldiers battlefield magic. He lifted Pax into the air by the head and informed his brothers that if they sided with Pax, he would act out. His definition of acting out, everyone in the room understood immediately, was several levels more drastic than whatever he was currently doing. "I'm not asking for anything difficult. I just want to save this figurine maker." Pax's hold over the situation dissolved within the hour. Ginger's family had already been rescued by Ruijud, who had apparently shown up at the inn, listened to the soldiers' situation, gotten riled up, and personally handled the hostage problem with his customary thoroughness. Once the hostages were freed, Ruijud had intended to charge the castle. The soldiers tried to explain they would handle the rest themselves. He didn't listen. With the hostages safe, Ginger no longer had leverage used against her. The barrier came down. Rudeus was freed. Pax was escorted away. Lilia was released. The king, reviewing the full situation, made his rulings. Pax, banished, officially studying abroad, actually sent to the King Dragon Realm as a hostage of no real consequence. Zanoba, also banished, studying abroad. Proposed by the first and second princes, who wanted the kingdom's most dangerous weapon, at least 2 countries away from them. Lilia, released, but required to be escorted to Paul to confirm her identity and clear her name. Ginger volunteered to accompany her. Zanoba had told her to protect his master's family. Some of Ruijud's rescued soldiers also offered to go along. Rudeus, invited by the king to stay as a court magician. The king's tone made it clear he already knew the answer would be no. It was. The king sighed and let him go. No apology, they were a royal family. The man-god's plan, such as it was, had mostly worked, even if Rudeus had scrambled the order by sending his letter before rescuing Aisha instead of after. The outcome was the best possible. Lilia and Aisha saved. Pax gone. Rudeus, free, and now in possession of a new pupil who was terrifying but enthusiastic. When Rudeus tried to leave, Zanoba clung to him in tears. "Master! Are you truly going to leave? Are you truly going to leave your pupil behind?" Rudeus said he was sorry. He had to keep moving. "Could you at least make me a figurine before you go?" He said no. Those took a lot of time. "No!" Rudeus promised. If they happened to meet again, he'd teach Zanoba how to make one from scratch. This constituted, apparently, the greatest gift Zanoba had ever received, because he immediately threw Rudeus into the air out of joy. Rudeus slammed against the ceiling. "Oh no!" Zanoba shrieked. "Ginger, healing magic!" Ginger healed him. Zanoba, pale and flustered, looked enormously relieved when Rudeus was upright again. Rudeus briefly considered excommunicating him, and then did not, because he did not want his head ripped off. "Stay safe, Master," Zanoba sobbed. "I have a feeling I'll eventually run into you again." "Yeah, you too." Ginger, watching the two of them, had tears running down her cheeks as well. The farewell conversation with Lilia happened at a fork in the road, one path toward Milis and one toward Asura. Eris's voice floated in through the window, enthusiastically describing the kennel master's combat feats to Aisha. Rudeus sat across from Lilia and felt mildly guilty about everything. She thanked him. He deflected to Rudeus and Eris, who had actually done the useful things. She informed him they'd told her it was all his strategy. "That was not my strategy," he said. She went quiet and looked displeased. They talked about Aisha. Lilia called her stupid for not recognizing how amazing Rudeus was. He pushed back on this. She was 6 years old. She was already remarkable. She was just an ordinary genius, rather than someone with memories from a past life. Paul's genes, as it turned out, were actually pretty good. Then Lilia asked what he thought of Aisha's appearance. He said she was cute. Lilia asked whether her chest would develop as she grew. Rudeus declined this avenue of conversation. Lilia then proposed that he take Aisha along on his journey to Asura. She had, she explained, been telling Aisha every single day since birth that she would one day serve Rudeus. She had taught her everything she knew. She'd be ready soon. She'd have a body all the boys would love. "Wait just a second. She's my little sister, you realize? I know that you're a womanizer." A pause. He told her Aisha was still 6 and needed to be with her parents. Lilia accepted this with quiet disappointment. He received back both the pendant and Roxy's panties. Now contained in a small box, the panties themselves washed, the divinity departed, only Lilia's sincere if baffling affection remaining. He was not going to let go of them again. She also mentioned the Asura royal palace, where she had previously worked, and said that compared to what she'd seen there, Rudeus and Paul could barely be called perverts. What followed was a brief description of the activities she'd witnessed among Asura's nobility that left Rudeus sitting very still. Then Lilia pulled him into an embrace and smothered his face in her chest. Miss Lilia, they're in my face." "You still haven't changed from when you were little," she said. The next morning, final carriage check, almost time to depart. Aisha came sprinting out of the Milis-bound carriage and grabbed Rudeus by the hem of his shirt. She dragged him to a small thicket by the roadside, crouched, gestured for him to crouch. They had a very important secret conversation, her request, take her along on the journey. He asked if Lilia had put her up to it. Aisha said no. Actually, it was the opposite. Her mother told her every day that she would serve her half-brother, and she did not want to serve a pervert, and Mr. Kennel Master was clearly a trustworthy person who understood why someone might keep a very important person's possessions as treasured objects. She slammed her fist against the ground for emphasis. Rudeus said no, gently but firmly. She'd find out his real identity eventually, and the Kennel Master facade would collapse. "Why not? He's a pervert. That's just your imagination." He tried to explain the panties using religious metaphor. In monotheistic traditions, people kept the clothing of holy persons as sacred relics. Roxy was someone who had changed his life. Keeping something she'd worn was keeping something important. He retrieved the forehead protector he'd been carrying since Rikarisu and handed it to her as a demonstration. Aisha cradled it. Something shifted in her expression, and she said, "So my brother wasn't a pervert." She asked him to promise that if her brother was never found, she could serve him instead. He said yes, if that happened. She asked if he was mad at her for calling him a pervert. He said of course not. No, wait. Thanks, big brother. She sprinted back to the carriage. He sat in the thicket for a moment. She completely saw right through you, Eris said from behind him. When had she? The carriage pulled away. Aisha turned to wave. Lilia bowed. See you, big brother. Let's meet again. It's a promise. He thought back over the clues she'd had. He'd called her by name at their first meeting without being told it. Eris and Roxy had almost certainly let his name slip later. And she was, by any measure, the cleverest 6-year-old he'd ever met. She hadn't confronted him immediately because she was evaluating whether her brother was someone she could trust. Had the kennel master persona been an attempt to covertly drag her along, she would have known. Ha ha! He really did look forward to seeing her when she was older. They left Sharon Kingdom behind and headed west on the long flat road toward Asura. The carriage wheels found every imperfection in the road surface with reliable enthusiasm. A steady, irregular percussion, creak thud, the axle making its small complaints each time a wheel dropped into a rut or rolled over a stone. Inside the carriage, it sounded like being in a wooden box someone was tapping at random, which was functionally what they were. The road flattened out as the planes took over, and the rhythm became almost meditative. Long stretches of grass in every direction, the kind of landscape that was pleasant precisely because nothing could approach without being visible for several minutes first. Grass as far as the eye could see. The faint outline of the Red Wyrm Mountains ahead, with slow shadows circling in the sky above them. The shadows moved differently from birds. Wider arcs, unhurried, as if they had all the time in the world, which they did. A silhouette at that altitude meant wingspan measured in meters, not centimeters. The carriage wheels went creak thud, steady and ordinary, and entirely indifferent to what was rotating above the peaks a few hours ahead. The kind of tranquility that only existed because nothing nearby could get close enough to disturb it. Occasional bandits appeared to demand they hand over their money. Eris handed them over to the nearest ditch via iron fist. Rudeus wanted to slaughter them, but, upon learning they were hungry civilians displaced by northern conflicts, reluctantly agreed to let them go. Just this once. The Red Wyrm Mountains divided the central continent. Red worms, low S-rank individually, gathered in hordes of several hundred, detected anything that entered their territory and swarmed it regardless of strength. Their one weakness was flight. They needed height to take off, which meant plains dwellers rarely encountered them. Those that occasionally fell to the plains via turbulent wind promptly became 10-man S-ranked bounty requests, worth about 100 gold pieces split among the party, enough for each person to live lavishly for a year. Many C-ranked adventurers took these requests impulsively. Most were barbecued and consumed. We don't need to detour around this thing. We have Rudeus with us. We could cut right through those mountains, Eris said, watching the circling shadows overhead with obvious longing. Don't be ridiculous, Rudeus said. But Rudeus could definitely do it. Rudeus explained that Ghislaine had defeated a Red Wyrm straggler on flat ground before she became a sword saint, with 5 advanced-tier sword fighters assisting her, with 2 of those 5 dying. Eris confirmed the 40% casualty rate without apparent concern. Rudeus then noted that the red worms above them were in their home territory, in the air, in groups of several hundred, and that even Rudeus himself thought this was impossible. Even the North God and Sword God, 2 of the 7 great powers, would probably turn back halfway through. Yeah, their stamina would most likely wear out halfway through. Not like you could sleep with dragons around, Roxy confirmed. But I'd still like to hunt one someday, Eris said. Rudeus made a note that he would definitely be enlisted for this when the time came, sighed, and directed the carriage around the mountains as planned.